Welcome, everybody. You are with the Academy of Adoption and Assisted Reproduction Attorneys. Today, we are covering assisted reproduction in the state of Minnesota. And we have two of our wonderful fellows with us today to introduce you to the state of Minnesota. But first, let's introduce you to them. Gary, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thank you, Kim. I'm Gary Diebele. I'm an attorney practicing with the law firm of Messerly Kramer in Minneapolis, about a 60 attorney firm. I head up our family law practice group, which is 6 attorneys. And I've been doing assisted reproduction work for probably 25 or more years.
That is a big firm. Wow. Yeah, yeah, it is. All right, Jody.
Hi, I'm Jody DeSmit, and I am an attorney here in Minnesota. I am in a much smaller firm. I have another partner who works with me, and we do a broad spectrum of family law, including assisted reproductive technology law, which I have been practicing probably about the same length of time that you have, Gary, probably what, 20 plus 25 years or so, a long time.
I think we learned it together, Jody, back when we were young lawyers.
I think we did as well, Gary.
But it makes you both go-to people, absolutely. So I'm not licensed in the state. And so tell me, is your state friendly to assisted reproduction technology?
I would say yes, we are. We don't have a statute that governs assisted reproductive technology. Gary and I have both testified before the legislature. We've been involved in committees to get law drafted, but we don't have a statute. So I can't tell you that, you know, this is exactly how this is going to happen, but our courts are friendly toward assisted reproductive technology cases, and we are able to establish parentage as a result of them.
Yeah, I can say that I think, Jody, between you and I and the other handful of people who do this, I don't think we've ever had one that's been denied. So by one way or another, we can cobble together the statutes that we have. We look at our parentage statute, our family law statutes, the adoption code, and we can almost always get the parentage determination that's made. The other thing I would add is Minnesota is wonderful because we have excellent medical facilities in the state. We're home of the world famous Mayo Clinic, the University of Minnesota, and we've got several other fertility clinics that are very experienced and very friendly to assisted reproduction. They work closely with the lawyers, and so it's a good state, not only legally, but medically as well.
Right.
Is it a LGBT friendly state for reproductive technology?
It is very much so. We don't have any issues in that regard at all. Yeah, I would say very much so. I think you'd agree with me, wouldn't you, Gary, that we're very friendly?
Minnesota's been in the forefront for years on LGBTQ issues. I would say in fact, we were doing same-sex adoptions like 30 years ago without having statutory authority for it. And that approach has certainly carried over in assisted reproduction. In fact, I would say a huge percentage of our ARTS cases in Minnesota are same-sex couples.
What about single intended parents?
We do those as well, and those are looked upon friendly by the court as well. So I haven't had any issues in that regard either. Courts have been friendly. In fact, this is one of the, I think, Gary, you'd agree with me, this is one of the fun things that really judges get to do. They enjoy doing these hearings. They'll tell you that they enjoy doing them, and it's in all of my years of practice, the only time I've ever had a judge step from the bench and give somebody a hug was when we were establishing parentage, and the judge came over and gave my client, the gestational carrier, a big hug and told her she restored his faith in humanity that day. So I mean, so they do like these. I think they do. I guess, Gary, would you agree?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's one good thing too, because if these babies come early sometimes, and you can have all sorts of little unexpected surprises that come along, and the judges, because they like these cases, are very accommodating for getting us on their calendars on a moment's notice and accommodating us with people that are out of state. And even though we're doing everything still by Zoom because of the pandemic, I suspect these cases in particular are going to continue to be things where the courts are willing to do remote hearings to accommodate the people, because they really want to help. They're viewing these as a positive situation.
Okay, you both have mentioned hearings. So what is that generic process that people go through for a parentage order in surrogacy? Of course, reproductive technology is also egg donation, sperm donation, but surrogacy is really the heart of what we're talking about. What does that process look like?
In Minnesota, we have 87 counties in
Oh,
Minnesota.
wow.
And to some extent, there's a little bit of variance between many of the counties, but we can get pre-birth parentage orders in most of the counties in Minnesota. The surprising and glaring exception to that is our two biggest metro area counties in the Twin Cities, Ramsey County and Hennepin County. They will require us to go in before birth and get a temporary order. Then we have to come back post-birth and prove up the petition and then get a post-birth parentage order. But in most of the other counties in Minnesota, we are able to do, and in fact, Jody and I kind of put this process together, I think, 25, 30 years ago, of doing pre-birth declaratory judgment petitions. So we do it, instead of going under our parentage statute, we bring it under a declaratory judgment. And with both sides represented by counsel, we do a stipulated parentage agreement, ask the court to declare the parentage of the intended parents pre-birth and without a hearing in most of those cases. And so we get an order that says, name the intended parents, the legal parents. We give it to the hospital pre-birth. The intended parents are at the hospital with the carrier, and the hospital issues the information to vital records, and we get a birth certificate within a short period after the baby is born.
Okay, short period. That's something people I know, they always want to know about every state, right? We could all make money off of just that question.
Yeah.
But it's a quick process for the birth certificate.
It is usually within a couple weeks of the issuance of the order, we can get a birth certificate. So we know folks over at Vital Records who are actually the individuals that are handling the birth certificate request in these particular cases, and they get that that there's anxiety over getting the birth certificate, and sometimes folks need that to be able to leave the United States, or they want it in hand for purposes of travel outside the country. And so they get that over at Vital Records, and they too are very willing to help us when we need it. So it's a nice relationship I think we have with them as well. The other thing I point out about the process in Minnesota, just so you have an awareness of this, is, as Gary mentioned, Hennepin and Ramsey County do require this sort of two-step process, if you will. Under those circumstances, if we have a non-genetic parent to establish, so we have a genetic and a non-genetic parent, then those counties require us to do a step parent adoption. And so I think it's nice to know that they allow us to wrap all of that in one proceeding. So we're not paying multiple filing fees, we're not having separate hearings. They will take care of that all at the same time. And so with respect to the birth certificate that's issued, no one would know that there was an establishment of parentage as to the genetic parent and a step parent adoption by the non-genetic parent. The birth certificate reflects parent and parent, and it doesn't say it was amended or anything like that. And I think I get that question a lot from folks. Where we can do a declaratory judgment action, as Gary said, ahead of birth, and get that order ahead of birth, judges are establishing parentage for both parents if there are two involved ahead of birth, so we don't have to do that step parent adoption, just so you know that part.
The other thing I would say is, if the intended parents if the parties have to go through a post-birth hearing like that, I have rarely had a case in Minnesota where that hearing has been more than a week after the birth. I mean, they really do move heaven, and usually it's within a couple of days. If baby's born on the weekend, I've been in court on like Tuesday to get it done. My mother had, if the carrier had to do a C-section, they're not real happy about that, having to traipse into court, the minute they get out of the hospital. But the courts are really, as I said, quite accommodating and willing to get us in quickly so we can get it done.
Great. Well, normally I ask how well you work together as Quad A fellows, but I think it's kind of obvious through this video you do. And how long you've worked together, right? But anything you want to say about being a fellow with the Academy?
Jody, go ahead.
Well, I would say I've always enjoyed being a fellow of the Academy, and I think it gives me a sense when I'm dealing with somebody, if they're a fellow, I know they have a level of expertise that I can trust and rely on, and I think that's a great thing to have from my perspective. Absolutely.
And I too, I can't say enough good things about the Academy in terms of what it means in terms of collegiality. We can always find an attorney in another state who's willing to help out if we have some kind of an issue that involves another state's laws. If we need referrals to find an agency or a medical insurance coverage or what have you. It's a great resource for that. And the other thing is I've served on the ethics committee for the Academy and worked on drafting our ethics code. And I think by far and away, our Academy has the most ethical, good attorneys for practicing. We regulate ourselves. We are practical in terms of what really is helpful to protect all the parties. And I think it's a process that works well. I think our people listening to this who are wanting to engage a Quad A attorney can be confident that we're well vetted, we're experienced, we're passionate, we're ethical people, and I think the Academy stands for all of that.
Can't agree any more than that. All right, well, thank you. We appreciate you sharing with us today about the state of Minnesota. If you want to contact either of these fellows, you can go back to the Academy's website. On the website, we have a map and you can zone into Minnesota specifically or any other states you're considering and find the contact information for each of these fellows. That website is adoptionart.org. Again, that is adoptionart.org. And we appreciate you two spending your time today to explain the state of Minnesota. And I urge everybody, please contact them if you want to look into Minnesota in any great detail.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Jody.